We're talking today with Mr. Walter Kloc of Snyder, New York. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Kloc, can you begin by telling us a little bit about your background? Where and when were you born, for instance?
I was born in Chicago, Cook County, and at age 1.5, my parents moved to Michigan, to a town called DeFord, and they were farmers. I grew up there, went to the DeFord High School, graduated there, then I went to Cass City High School, and because of my athletic ability, I got a scholarship to go to Mount Pleasant,
Central Michigan?
Central Michigan.
Okay. Now, and then in what year did you start college?
I started college in 36.
Okay.
36. I went there 4 years. Now, I did not graduate because I lacked 2 credits. One was, they required Latin. I did not have Latin in high school. So, first year I failed Latin. I finally passed it second year. So I was there, I lost 1 credit there. And then I did fail in integral calculus, so I lacked a credit there. So I didn't graduate. However, I intended to come back in 40 to finish school. However, we were interviewed by some Army people that came around looking for people to sign up for aviation cadet who had 4 years of college or 2 years of college. Well, it kind of appeared to, because I was always interested in flight. When I was a little kid, I used to take cedar rail fence and cut them up and so forth and make little toy airplanes. So I was a love of flying, and however, I had a summer job, so I went and worked summer of 40. But thinking more, at that time they were getting close to drafting, and I had to sign up for registration. And the more I thought of it, I said, well, I think I better get into aviation cadet before they draft me.
Right.
So at that time, I worked for 4 summers while going to college for Marquette Railway, the car ferry between Ludington and Milwaukee. So when I finished the summer in 40, from Ludington I hitchhiked to Chicago, and because that's the only area that they had for signing up for cadet. That is Army cadet.
Right.
And I passed the physical, and they told me that in a few months I'll be called. So, well, a few months went by, but it wasn't until February of 42 that they called in to Detroit then, because I went back home and I waited for the call. And
February of 41 or 42?
41.
Okay, 41, because that would have been a whole extra year there.
February of 41. Finally, I went to Detroit, and finally sworn in, and told me that I would be called when the airfields were ready. Well, time passed, and I guess the airfields weren't ready, and it wasn't until the Pearl Harbor, which was on the 7th, and I got a telegram on the 10th, report to San Antonio. So I reported to San Antonio, and I took my basic training, and then I was sent to...
let's back up there for a moment. Now, what did your basic training consist of?
Well, ground school in military conduct, military, everything that
So the,
learning about the military.
so the,
You know, your uniforms, and you're wearing, you know, your conduct, your all the etiquette and so forth, Army, and then also learning about flying. The aerodynamics of airplane action and so forth, the basic training.
okay. Well, did you do a lot of drill and marching and that kind of thing?
Oh
Okay.
yes, oh yes. So that involved marching and doing all that. And I finished the basic, and then I was sent to airfield in Panhandle of Texas. Right now it slips my mind.
Oh, it's okay. I mean,
But,
we'll
okay,
get
well,
in there.
that was there. So I took my primary flight training there, and at 6 hours of training, I was able to solo. I soloed.
Now, what kind of plane did they
It was
have
a
you in?
PT-19. PT-19. So I soloed at 6 hours, and I kept training and got up to 32 hours, where they were taking the final tests to send whether you qualify to go on into basic training. Well, what they did, they washed out 80% of the class. Now, I surmise the reason they probably washed out so many of us is because everybody went for pilot training, nobody for Bombardier, nobody for navigator, nobody for gunner. So they had to get people. So when I got washed out, I was kind of disappointed, but I love the Air Force, so they asked me whether I want to remain in the Air Force, and I said yes. Well, they gave me a choice of either Bombardier or Navigator. So I chose Bombardier.
Okay.
So then, I think it was in late May, I think it was. Sometimes I was sent to San Antonio. I spent a week there waiting for a call to for the training of Bombardier training, and I was finally called and sent to Midland, Texas, where I took my Bombardier training, and I was commissioned.
All right. Now let's tell me a little bit about the Bombardier training. What did the actual training consist of?
Well, the training consists of dropping bombs on a target that was 100 foot in diameter and had a shack in the middle. And it was from 9,000, I think we dropped bombs to approximately 11,000, which was I think it was a AT-11. I think it was the aircraft.
Okay, was that a twin engine plane?
It was a twin engine, yeah, and it had bomb. It carried 10 practice bombs. So we were dropping. I took my training there.
Okay. Now, when you were doing this, were you targeting just by looking at the target?
No, we had a Norton bomb sight.
You had an Norton bomb
Oh
sight.
yeah, the Norton bomb sight, and we also had a trainer, which we controlled. It was 4 wheels, and we set up about 8 feet above it. We had a bomb sight, and on the floor was the route, and then there was a target, and we had to steer this thing here to the target on the floor, and then drop our bombs, and that was recorded on our how precise we were and how accurate we were on dropping. So we had those trainers, and we had those trainers first before we went up for flights. But after we got into flights, we were then practicing approaching the target from different angles and for a short run. And they were trying to teach us to keep the bomb run as short as possible. And we got down to where I was able to make a evasive action and then and make a bomb run for 20 seconds and drop the bombs on the target.
Okay. Now, at this point, were you training to sort of fly individually or in a formation?
Individually.
Okay.
It was all individual training.
All right.
No formation.
All right. And when you were using the Norden bomb sight, one feature of that was that there would be a time when the Bombardier could actually control the plane at a certain point?
Oh, yes.
And you were doing that?
Bombardier took control of the plane, and he would control it, and then he would steer it to the target, and drop his bomb, and then after that, the pilot took over.
Okay. Now, did it help you that you'd had the flight training already and you had done your own solo flights?
Oh yeah, it helped me, and I guess I must have done pretty good because after I got commissioned, I got a reserve commission. That was July, I think, 20th of 42. I was commissioned, and they sent me to Columbia, South Carolina, as a squadron bombardier, which had me in charge of the bombardier training for that squadron, and had 4 instructors assigned with me to help me to do the training. But the field was not ready at Columbia, so from July until sometime in September, after they got the runways finished and so forth, they finally were bringing in the B-25s and they were assembling the crews there, the pilots, co-pilots, and bombardier, navigators, and gunners, and radio man. They were all assembling them there, and then we were train them in bomb runs, in skip bombing as well as high altitude bombing.
Can you describe what skip bombing is for people who don't know that?
Skip bombing is flying above water, probably no more, like around 10 feet above water or so forth, and then dropping a bomb and pulling off and let the bomb hit the water and skip into a ship.
So kind of like skipping a stone, but a lot bigger.
Yes, similar to that. So did that, and then we also had, because it was in the B-25 that we were being trained, and the B-25, the bombardier had to be also a navigator, and a navigator also, when they were training, they had to be a bombardier. There's a dual purpose in the B-25.
Right.
So we also had to have navigation flights, so we had that training. So I was training the crews in bomb runs and short bomb runs, and until November of 43. In number 43, I got orders to go overseas. And so I went overseas. I flew on the B-24s to Hawaii from San Francisco, and then from Hawaii we flew in a seaplane to Fuji Island, and from Fuji to Caledonia, and then from Caledonia we flew to Port Princesa, the island there.
Well, wait, no, it wasn't.
It wasn't the one, there's another Port Princesa
okay.
island, not the one on the Philippines.
All right, so this maybe was in Solomons or in Hebrides, or okay.
And then from there we flew to Guadalcanal. And then from Guadalcanal I was picked up by my squadron.
So you were joining a squadron that was already together?
Together.
And so you were...
In fact, the squadron that I joined, they were in combat, and they were flying missions, and they lost quite a few aircrafts because of their bomb runs.
Mm-hmm.
So when I joined the outfit, I became Squadron Bombardier again.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept the crew on Sterling Islands. And again, I was training the crews
Mm-hmm.
in short bomb runs,
Okay.
20-second bomb runs. So for about a month, we were training. All the pilots were being trained
Mm-hmm.
on the bombardiers.
Okay. So you were not at this point going out on combat missions?
No,
Okay.
they brought the crew. I don't remember. I think they were either flying from Philippines or from Sterling Islands on missions,
Mm-hmm.
and where they were pretty well shot up and
Mhm.
so forth.
So you were
Because
taking.
they were taking 1-minute bomb runs,
Mm.
and so they had me retrain the crews
Mhm.
on the bombardiers that were
Right.
there for short bomb runs.
Okay.
We did that, and then from then on, after the training, we started flying on bomb missions
Okay.
to Bougainville, to Ribal,
Mm-hmm.
and to I forget the other islands that we flew. And then I think from Sterling we went to another island. I believe it was my memory recalls. I think it was Green Island.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed there for a short time and flew more missions to Ribal and
Okay. Now, before you continue here, it's going to go back to some of those first missions you're flying. Now, Rabaul was a major Japanese base at this
Yeah.
point. You're a little bit. By this time in the war, the Americans are kind of on the offensive and moving forward. They've cleared Guadalcanal and so forth.
Well, at first it was we were bombing Bougainville.
Mm-hmm.
That was the beginning.
Yeah.
When Bougainville was neutralized, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
then we started flying to
To Rabaul?
Ribal.
Okay. Now, when you're flying to Bougainville and to Rabaul, what kind of opposition were you getting?
So a lot of anti-aircraft and
Mhm.
also fighters.
Mm-hmm.
But we had P-38 escorts.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't run into, actually only on one occasion that we ran into where a fighter got into our unit
Mm-hmm.
as we were flying. But they eventually, I guess the P-38s got them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only one occasion, but the rest of it was ack-ack,
Okay.
which was heavy.
And what altitude would you fly at when you were
Well,
taking
we
these
would
places?
vary altitudes. We'd fly from 9,500 to up to 12,000.
Mhm.
We would never fly the same altitude on each mission.
Mhm.
And we mostly flew bombing on runways, bombing the areas and also where they had the storage
Mhm.
facilities. And also we went after the ships
Mhm.
that they had there.
Now, would you attack ships at sea or just in the harbor?
We'd attack them in the harbor, and then we'd catch one on the open.
Mm-hmm.
Then we attack them on the open. Yeah. Some of our squadron caught them out in the sea, and they attacked them.
Mhm.
But personally, myself, I never had the opportunity to make any attacks on any aircraft in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
But some of our crew members did.
Okay. Now, did you fly ground support? Were there American troops on Bougainville when you were doing this? Or?
No, that was before the American troops.
Okay.
They were neutralizing Ribal, I
Yeah.
guess, before the.
Because both on Bougainville and on, I guess it was New Britain was where Rabaul was. The Americans made landings at different points. They didn't go all the way to the main bases, but.
No, we did not go to the bases. No, we were also flying to New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
besides Rabaul, New Guinea, and I forget some of the other islands where the Japanese were, or near New Guinea.
Right.
Trying to neutralize them. Finally, I guess when the Army finally got into Hollandia, when Hollandia was neutralized and they had the bases built there, then we transferred to
Hollandia.
Hollandia. In fact, I was sent ahead with the crew there to set up the base. So I spent there a month setting up, cutting down the trees and the brush and everything, and clearing out the jungle for a month before the rest of the squadron moved in.
So the Japanese did not have an air base there?
No.
Okay.
However, we would get night raids. They would come at night, and we'd hit the foxholes. However, after we moved in, our squadron joined us again. Of course, I was, still squadron bombardier, and from there we flew on missions to Saran. I think it was Saran and Borneo and part of Indochina, which I forget what the islands they were called then.
Well,
So we flew missions there.
The Indochina is sort of the area that today is Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, and what we call Indonesia is the Dutch East Indies, and that's kind of that's where Saran is and Borneo.
Went through there, those islands all there where the Japanese were. So we're flying missions there, and then we also hit some islands in northern, the western part of New Guinea, where some of the Japs were. So after I forget how many months we were stationed there, then our unit moved to Sansapur, which is on the west end of New Guinea. And then from there we were then flying missions more to Borneo and further west on different islands there.
Did you fly up toward the Philippines too, or not at this
We
point?
eventually were transferred from there to
Morotai?
Morotai. We spent some time from Morotai. We flew from Morotai, flying missions there, and then we were there only a short time, maybe a couple months or maybe 3 months the most. And then we moved to Puerto Princesa, which is the westerly island of Philippines.
Okay, that's in Palawan, or?
It was on Palawan. That was on Palawan. It was a beautiful air base, and had beautiful beaches there. And from there we continued flying. We flew to Indochina from there, and I had a total of 52 missions, and then when we got replacements, then I was sent back to the States from there.
Okay, and when did they send you back then?
They sent me back, I think, of end of May of '45. So I came to the States in late May, and I didn't get my separation papers. Being a reserve, I did not get a discharge. I received a separation. And so I received a separation in July. I forget what date. And so then after a few months I joined the reserves.
Okay, now let's go back over into the Pacific. Tell me a little bit about what your responsibilities were as Squadron Bombardier. Did you fly in the lead plane when they attacked?
Yes, I flew. I did not fly all missions as a lead bombardier. I flew, I would say, 50% of my mission was as a lead bombardier, and the other missions I would fly on the wing and have one of other bombardiers be leader
Okay.
on the mission.
Now, typically, how many aircraft would be involved in one of the missions you
It
were?
would be, our squadron would fly 12.
Mm-hmm.
12.
And did you fly a lot of missions in conjunction with other squadrons?
Oh
or-
yes, oh yes, we had, see, our group had 5 squadrons. The 69th, 70th, the 100, let's see, 100, 75th,
Mhm.
yeah, 69, 70th, 75th, 100, and the 390th,
Mhm.
the 5 squadrons.
Right.
So, yeah, we flew sometimes four squadrons.
Mhm.
Of each would fly 12 planes, if they had 12 planes flyable.
Yeah.
Sometimes they only had 9 planes, you know, some of the squadrons flew. But most, they try to fly 12 aircraft from each squadron.
All right. Now, when you were conducting a raid on a fixed position like a air base or naval base, did each individual bomber use its own bomb site, or did they just have the lead bomber
No,
do
they
it?
would drop off the lead bomber.
Mhm.
In fact, I flew a number of missions where I was the lead bomber of the group,
Mm-hmm.
where everybody would drop off of me.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was in Rebal and Saran,
Mm-hmm.
and then other missions where each squadron was assigned a different area.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we would be assigned to, like a Rebal, there were I think 2 or 3 airfields, and there were gun emplacements and so forth. So they were assigned. So I would fly as a lead bombardier for say where they had the anti-aircraft spotted.
Mhm.
So we'd bomb those, and the other ones would take the airfield and whatever targets that were being assigned to each squadron.
Mhm.
But on certain, particularly on runways, they would fly, say, 4 squadrons
Mhm.
to bomb the whole runway.
Right.
And all the aircraft and so forth that was around the runway.
Right. Now, did you conduct any attacks in support of ground troops in any of these places?
No, not to my knowledge. However, we did a lot of low flying. We
Mhm.
had low missions, strafing missions,
Mm-hmm.
where we flew on targets. And low missions where we did drop not flares, but
Incendiaries? Or?
incendiaries, bombs. We dropped. So with low missions.
Were the low missions more dangerous than the high ones or not?
Yes, we lost aircraft on low mission. In fact, this one mission that we flew, we lost 2 aircraft
Mhm.
on low mission flight. However, on the high altitude, we also lost aircraft. In fact, on one mission, we had an engine shot out.
Mhm.
And luckily, it was on fire. The pilot was able to feather the engine, luckily.
Mhm.
And
Now, what does it mean to feather the engine?
Well, feather the engine to put the prop so it would not windmill.
Okay.
When you lose an engine, it stops.
Right.
But to feather the prop so it wouldn't windmill.
Because if
So-
it windmilled, would that affect how you could control the plane?
Yeah, you lose the airspeed.
Mhm.
In fact, we had, I think, all the time that we were bombing Rebal, we had, I think, 3 aircrafts that ditched
Mm-hmm.
because they could not feather the engine
Mm-hmm.
and could not keep up, and they had to ditch.
Mhm.
And it never happened in our squadron, but like I think in the 70th squadron. In fact, one bombardier in the 7th squadron, he had 2 ditches
Mm-hmm.
on 2 different missions.
Mm-hmm.
His aircraft had to ditch, and they were saved. And I guess 2 weeks later, he had to aircraft ditch again, and they were saved. I think on one mission they lost one individual for some reason. Otherwise, pretty well much saved. And then some other squadron also had a ditching.
Yeah.
But we were lucky. When our pilot feathered the plane and it was able to put out the fire, we flew, but we kept losing the altitude. And so the pilot gave orders to strip the plane of everything we could. So we threw out our parachutes, we threw out our machine guns, and everything that we could dismantle, we threw out. The only thing we saved our Mae West.
Right.
And that was still enough. We're still losing altitude, so he started dumping fuel. When he was dumping fuel, we all had to sit still and not move so we would not create a static because the fumes were so terrible. And he got enough fuel dumped that we were leveled off at 500 feet and we were able to maintain to our back home. So we got home safely and landed, but the crew chief on the ground told us that you're lucky. He says, if you didn't make your first landing and you had to go around, you would never made it. So I guess they're lucky there.
All right. Was that as close as you got to being in an air crash or anything like that?
No, I had another close call, and that was on Reball. I was sent on a B-25H. Now, B-25H had the 75mm cannon, and they had no co-pilot. So the Bombardier, I rode as in a co-pilot seat, doing the navigation, and they had one pilot. And our orders were, because there were ships that were stored on the river that ran through the Reball and up towards the western part of Reball. So our mission was to go around this small mountain and pick up the river and fly down the river and see if we could find something. Well, we did. There was about a 30-foot ship under camouflage stored on a curve of the river. So we missed it because it came up on us so fast. So pilot peeled off and made a second run. Well, when he was making the second run, he shot the first 75 shot, and he was short. And then he fired the second one, and he hit the ship. And at that time, the sky opened up. It looked like it was hailing sideways. And all what that was is tracer bullets. Well, we got 5 holes in our aircraft. One missed the pilot by 6 inches, and of course it missed me by a foot or more because it went right through the aircraft. Well, we had 5 holes in the aircraft. The turret gunner, a bullet went in there and it ricocheted and mangled one of his fingers. So we got a Purple Heart.
Right.
And we had the cables severed on one of our rudders. So we had to fly back on one rudder. That's a close call there. And so we got back to the base, and of course we were interrogated by the intelligence officers. And so now what this was happened when we flew down the river, there was a high hill on the left side of where we flew down this river, and that's where the AA guns were, and that's where the storage was, and that's where the Japanese had their bivouacs there. So next day, mission. think it was 3 squadrons were assigned for that area.
Mm-hmm.
And we flew and we bombed it, and that thing there just looked like the whole side of the hill blew up.
Right.
So we hit the ammos, and we hit the gas release storage there and everything. So we took care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they never, I guess the intelligence didn't pick that up because they thought that was north of Reball. And there was no airfields there.
Right.
So they didn't think, they thought probably most of it was on the southern part where the airfields were, where their storage would be for gasoline
Right.
and where most of the Army and pilots would be staying down there. But that was really quite a show when we hit them.
All right. Now, tell me a little bit about some of the facilities that you had at these bases. What kind of living conditions did you have when you were on these islands?
It was jungle living. Living, in tents, and we had to be aware of malaria. So we did take medication for malaria.
Right.
And in tents, although we had nets in a bunker, so at least at night we could sleep without the mosquitoes biting us. But we had to be careful. But we had ordinary K rations or whatever it was. However, when we got to Hollandia, I was sent with just a pilot, a radio man, and myself, and a co-pilot. There's 4 people went to Australia, Brisbane, to pick up some meat, some eggs, and whatever we could. So we picked up beer, and most of it was vegetables or whatever we could pick up. Any fruits we could pick up. So we loaded the B-25. What they did, they converted some aircraft that was, you might say, not too suited for combat or something. They converted into what they call a fat cat. So I flew that mission from Zanzibar to Brisbane, Australia, where we picked up all the food that we could find. And so we brought that, so our people could enjoy some fresh meat and some eggs.
Well, was the meat you got mutton, or could you find something better?
I think it was mostly mutton. I think it was mutton, but that was delicious. Whatever. And we also used to, some of our kitchen people, I guess, used to bribe the Seabees. The Seabees, they had all the food, so they would go down and bribe the Seabees, offer them airplane ride for some fresh eggs and stuff like that.
So the Seabees had Navy food.
Yeah, they had a lot of food. So we would do that, get some food, but K ration, they either kind of got sick of it.
Yeah. Now, did the man in your unit have any problems with tropical diseases or things like that?
No, but I did have, I did get I guess a fungi infection in my toes.
Yep.
And of course that was taken care of, by medics. That's the only thing I ran into. But I don't know about the rest of the crews. I'm not familiar with anything that was serious.
Okay.
However, we did lose people where they were shot in the aircraft, and they were brought back, and they had to be buried on the base.
Right. Now, did you get to go on a furlough or leave at any point when you were out there?
Yes. When it wasn't until we got to Sansepor that again I got a rest leave, and I was sent to Sydney for I think it was, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks.
Yep.
I remember then. So that was enjoyable. We enjoyed it. In those days, you know, the pay we received, I had that sent home. I kept a little bit for myself, and a little bit of money that I kept for myself. Of course, you couldn't spend it any place, so accumulated. And then we used to play cards, so I was lucky in cards, so I accumulated some money. So when I went on vacation for furlough to Austria, Sydney, Australia, I had enough money to rent a car.
Wow.
So I rented a car for the duration there. So I was able to enjoy and travel around Sydney a little bit. And of course, you were restricted how far you could go out of the city. I mean, there was the Australian restriction. However, I met a girl there, and she was the daughter of some official. And so with her, she got somehow permission, so we were able to travel outside of Sydney into areas which was, you know, a beautiful part of Sydney's, and outside of Australia we were able to, I mean, outside of Sydney, that we were able to visit and enjoy the visit there. And also from Sansepor, I was also sent on another Fat Cat mission. And then I think when we got to Morte, I think I got sent on another furlough. So I was down to Australia, Sydney twice. On furlough.
All right. Now, while you were on these bases, did the Army make any effort to provide entertainment? Did you have movies or USO or things like that?
No. We were very much in the jungle, so we didn't have no entertainment whatsoever.
All right. Now, at any of the places where you were stationed, were there still Japanese soldiers in the area?
Oh yes. On Hellandia, when we were there, we had some Japanese raids came on there and dropped their bombs, and we were lucky there that they missed, for some reason they missed our. They had two bombers that night come over and drop bombs, and for some reason they missed our area, and I guess they dropped the bombs too late or something. They missed our area, but our anti-aircraft finally got them, and the P-38s who were stationed on an island outside of Hollandia, they went up and they got them. They got both of them.
Okay, so this was a daylight attack?
At night.
Okay.
Oh, this is night.
So you had P-38s that could function as night fighters?
Night fighters. It's not the night fighters together. Get them.
Right.
So,
Were there Japanese soldiers on the ground in any of these places? Stragglers?
they were, but we were. They never made no raids on us. But we were told they were there.
Yeah, because there were a lot of Japanese personnel kind of left behind on New Guinea.
Yes.
And the Australians in some areas cleared them out, but
Yeah,
otherwise we left them there.
Yeah, they were, but we were told not to wander out of the base area.
Okay. Now, did you also have warnings about associating with the native population?
Yes, one thing that we were warned when we were in New Guinea and at Mortai. There, we were warned not to wear any Christian symbols because, particularly in the Western New Guinea and some on Luzon area, there were natives who, for some reason, if they caught anybody with Christian symbols, they would kill them.
They must not have liked missionaries.
Yeah. So so that's the warning we had, you know, from the natives. If we ever parachuted, make sure you didn't have anything on you.
Were there warnings to stay away from the women and things like that, or did you not even see them?
No. We had women there, and the women would walk around. The children would walk around naked, and the women would walk around with the upper exposed, but no, it didn't bother. We were not told to bother them.
But you didn't have real discipline problems because of that or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge.
All right.
No.
Okay. Now, did you have much news from the outside? Were you aware of the progress of the campaigns you were in the middle of, or what did you know about the war from there?
Very little news. Very little news that we had.
Okay. Now, are there other particular incidents or things that happened to you while you were out there in these islands that you haven't, that tend to come back to you that you haven't really mentioned here yet?
Well, one of the sad things for me was when, say, the fellow that was bunking next to me, you know, he was lost, and I had to get his
his belongings together and send them back. Yeah. You may have been fortunate you didn't have to do more of that sort of thing. Let's sort of shift the gear there a little bit. What was your response when you found out you were going home?
Well, I didn't really see. We could go home after 50 missions, but being a squadron bombardier and in that position, I didn't really look forward to going back to the state. I was willing to stay with the unit,
Right.
but when they sent the replacement, and they said, "Well, we got the replacement for you, so you can go home now." So I went home.
Okay.
But
Now,
I stayed on longer than normal.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned a little bit about the base you were on in Puerto Princesa. You said it was a really nice place to be. What made that a better base?
There was a beautiful beach, beautiful beach for swimming, and when the high tide was, but when the low tide, then we had a beach that was 30 feet wide, you know, or sometimes to 100 feet wide. When the low tide, and a beautiful sandy beach, white sandy beach, and it was for miles each direction. And of course, there we were among palm trees, no jungle, just palm trees. So it was a beautiful place to stay. Of course, we stayed in tents, so that wasn't bad. But in New Guinea, we stayed in the jungle, you know, where we chopped out the roll brush among trees and so forth, and also on some of the islands.
Now, when you got back to the States and you're finally released from service at that point, what did you do then?
Well, I got a job with General Motors when I came back as a student engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for a student engineer doing designing work.
Mhm.
Because in college I majored in industrial art.
Mm-hmm.
So I had drafting
Right.
and some of the mechanical training in that.
Mhm.
And so, and I also took electrical. So, you know, I knew enough about electricity, so they
Mhm.
hired me as a student engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So I did mechanical design and some electrical design for General Motors. And then I was doing there, and then they send me, when I design certain projects, I went on the floor with the design, and the people who had to build it, I supervised the construction
Right.
of my design,
Mm-hmm.
doing that. And then I did that from, because I went back to, I think, you know, after I got separated because I remained, when I got back, end of May,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, my discharge paper read to July the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I enjoyed myself.
Right.
But after I got discharged,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when I went to work for GM.
And how long did you wind up working for GM?
Well, I finally got work for him. I was 43 years.
That's pretty good.
43 years I worked for GM.
Did you ever finish your college degree?
No, no. But when I was I worked for GM, and then when GM in '50 was building a new plant to build the Curtiss Wright engines, 3350 and the 3650 engines. Chevrolet plant in Tonawanda, New York, was to build those engines. Well, I was sent there, and they promoted me from engineer into a supervisor, foreman, in charge of the drafting and engineering department of the maintenance there. So again, I was in charge of the designing, and I had 4 draftsmen working under me, designing everything that to be put in the new plant, which involved designing the pits for machinery and conveyors and everything necessary to complete the plant. So after that plant got into operation, then as a foreman, I was sent on the floor where I was in charge of maintenance of electricians and pipe fitters and millwrights and all the trades. I was in charge. I was that into 50, from 50 to 54. 54, Chevrolet was again building a new plant. So then I was sent there as a project engineer from the excavation for the plant and putting in the foundations for the plant and building up the plant, and then I went into the engineering office again as in charge of the drafting room to design all the stuff necessary in the plant.
Sounds like it made for a pretty interesting career.
Oh yes.
You kept having new challenges.
Then I was promoted to general foreman, and for a while, and then they needed some more designs. So they put me back in the office and in charge, and they promoted me to senior engineer. So again, there I was designing things, and in fact, some of my stuff was patented, GM patented, and some of my designs were adopted by other plants. In fact, like Defiance, Ohio accepted some of my designs, and Saginaw, and they installed my designs incorrectly. And I had to go over there, sat there for a whole week, re-engineering what they did and install it. So I kind of enjoyed that, and that's also to Saginaw, sent over there to re-engineer what they did not install correctly. So enjoyed it. So I worked. I retired from GM at age of 66 with 43 years of service.
Well, all right. Now, to look back on your time in the service, how do you think that experience wound up affecting you? Did it change you, or did you learn things from it?
Yes, you know, service made you more conscious of life and how fragile life can be, and also the hardship that that you live down there. Hey, you can survive. You don't have to have all the convenience.
Right.
You can exist. As long as you have food and a roof over your head, you can exist. Which brought on. So I was more or less frugal and bringing up my family. How I was able to save money for retirement, which now I enjoy. Which I was able to have a home. I traveled over states from one end to the other 7 times, and been in every state except Alaska and Oregon. And I've been to Europe 7 times, which was Turkey and.
Now, did you get married? Did you get married after the war or before?
Yes, I got married in 47. I got married in 47. Yeah, in fact, I met my wife at work. She worked in the same plant as I did, and she worked in accounting. And but however, after we got married, they had to transfer her out of accounting because she knew information which they felt that having a husband would probably know some information which it was wanted. So they transferred her to central office where she was there with the GM executives there, and we had children, and the first 2 children were born in Detroit where I work. But when I got transferred to Buffalo, to the Tonawanda plant, and bought a new house. Had a house constructed and built there, and in fact, I live in the same house today after 58 years.
Oh, yeah. All right. 51. Yeah.
Yeah. So life was good. I mean, I was working for GM. Now, you asked me about did I want to finish up my degree? Yes. When I was working for GM, at first, I was working only 8 hours, so I decided to go join high school. So I went to Lawrence Tech to see if I could pick up enough degrees. Now, the only thing is when they transferred my
Your credits.
I lost some credits. So, in other words, instead of just picking up 2 credits for graduation. I think it was about 6 credits that I had to pick up. So I was going to school, and I went there for night school for 1 year, and got a couple credits because you only could take a couple credits at night school. So I got to pick up a couple credits. But then I start working 7 days a week, 12 hours. You know, and in fact, a few times I worked 16 hours. I couldn't keep up with school, so I dropped it. So I never finished school.
Yeah.
And, but then at my work, you know, being an engineer, and getting paid well, so I figured, you know, I'm doing well without a degree.
That's right. And it actually happened to an awful lot of guys that I've talked to. They had practical experience and ability, and they could get jobs and just go and do
so
them.
I had ability to imagine and design things that people never thought of. I designed things that so simple. In fact, one time, one design, they wanted to put in GE automated machines, which cost about $80,000. They want to buy 2 of them to do the job. Well, I designed my stuff, which was under 12,000, to do the same job that what they proposed to do. In fact, this is why I was a general foreman, and they called me back as a senior engineer, because they knew I could design something, and I did. So that was installed, and that's, you know, saving for GM. I saved millions of dollars for GM.
That's it. Okay, now this tape is just about exactly done here, and I think that probably makes a fairly good concluding point here for the interview. So thank you very much for talking to me. All right.